Peace, peace, peace. I am Phillip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the July 15th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to the people who are watching on Facebook Live. Shouts to the people who are watching on YouTube Live. Make sure you subscribe at Quadify LLC. And last but not least, shout out to the people who are on IG Live. Listen, man, we gonna get into some conversation today, and I don't even want to spend too much time on the first topic, which is the CDC. So, the Trump administration have stripped the CDC of their powers with regards to COVID 19. They are now making hospitals report numbers directly to them and not to the CDC. And people might be like, well, what's the difference? Who cares? Well, listen, first let's get to the statistics, right? Right now we have 3.4 million cases of COVID 19 here in America with 136,000 deaths. Again, I always say they only speak about it in terms of who's alive versus who died. When there's a lot of things that's taking place in the middle. So we're talking about those people. Get well soon to the good homie Mark Lamont Hill, who announced he has COVID 19 or he was diagnosed with COVID 19 recently. But we don't talk about the lung damage. We don't talk about the COVID toes. We don't talk about the heart issues and a lot of things that are coming to the light with regards to COVID 19. And so now here we are, where there's a conflict that exists between the CDC and the White House, which means this has been politicized as well. We know that the White House has politicized everything. They've politicized George Floyd to where y'all president, not mine, was saying how, oh, yeah, it was devastating, but white people get killed by police too at higher numbers. Everything is being politicized, and this is no different, right? So the issue with this is there's inherent conflict, right? He's gotten on the news, your president have gotten on the news day in and day out talking about how we're testing more, so that's why the numbers are high. If we didn't test as much, the numbers will be lower. So now with that logic and they're getting all the data, what do we think is going to happen? Yeah, everything isn't going to be reported. Now, apparently, the CDC will still have access to this information, but we don't know how it's going to be, what's going to happen with the data, what's going to happen with the information. Right now, the public had the opportunity to go on, or have the opportunity to go on the CDC website to see what's taking place, what's happening with regards to these numbers, if we chose to, right? And so now, under the guise of streamlining what's taking place with the CDC and COVID, so we can get information quicker, there's a lot of skepticism as to whether or not we really gonna get some real information out here. It's the idea of that they've proposed that this is somehow going to help minimize the cases or help with this epidemic that we're going through. And I don't see how, right? I don't see how the numbers and manipulating the data is going to help us in any way. It's going to give people a false sense of security, which we see that a lot of people are already doing, right? They're already maneuvering with the false sense of security, like, yo, we good. Meanwhile, cases in 41 states have risen. We see what's happened in Florida, where a former official stated that I believe it was the mayor of Miami-Dade County wanted her to directly give her the numbers, and the numbers was somehow misconstrued. Same thing would happen with Arizona, and which is, ringing alarms in people's heads and officials everywhere, because we recognize that people gonna lie out here. People are going to lie. People aren't going to tell the truth, especially in a year where Trump's job is on the line. And so I'm concerned, right? But I'm going to wear my mask regardless, because I think that's one thing that we can do to really give us some sense of security, just a little bit. by wearing our mask if we decide to go out into these public spaces. Not having to be seen everywhere, right? Going to these happy hours and going to the mall, because again, these things aren't necessities. Even going to the gym. I understand how the gym could help improve the mental and physical wellness of an individual, but it's a hotbed, a hot spot for COVID-19. And so sometimes we just got to sit down, right? We just got to sit down because, again, our wellness is on the line. And so that's really all I got to say about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I really wanted to get into this Nick Cannon conversation. And it's one of the reasons why I was late getting on, probably about 7:05, 5 minutes later, because I'm sitting there reading up on on Black Hebrews and the Hebrew Black Israelites, or whatever the name is, right? Black Hebrew Israelites, there we go. I've known them to be here in Philly on different corners, spewing their information, right? Going on rants. Don't let a white person walk by, because they will let them have it. But apparently, Nick Cannon's belief in the black man being the original Hebrew has gotten him fired. So I'm going to play one of the videos and then read some of the comments that Nick Cannon has subsequently made with regards to being fired by Viacom.
The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight, okay,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments, so they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this conquering barbaric mentality.
And so what you saw there was a clip from his YouTube show, Cannon's Class, where he was sitting down with Professor Griff, who's known for being associated with Public Enemy, who also was blackballed in the late 80s for making what was considered anti-Semitic remarks. In that clip, Nick Cannon was talking about white folk and how white folk are the original savages, right? And how they ultimately had to adapt because they when they went off into foreign land, and then they adopted this barbaric mentality, which we've seen, right? We see these, and I can't recall some of these individuals that you know we talk about in history, right? But they've adopted this mindset. And when I initially heard about Nick Cannon getting fired from Viacom, which houses his TV show Wild 'N Out, which he considers a $1 billion entity. I don't know how true that is, but I know it's definitely worth a lot of money. It's the only reason why a lot of people watch MTV, especially black folk. We know Viacom owns BET. We know they own VH1. And we recognize the type of content that are on those channels. And so here we have Nick Cannon on his Cannon Class being open and honest about what he's learned with regards to history. Now, he's been under the tutelage of some of our brightest minds, in particular Dr. Gregory Carr, who's a professor at Howard University, right? And if he is the preeminent black historian alive today, I've had the privilege of meeting him several times, having him on my radio show. And he's a thoughtful brother, he's a respectful brother, and he's a loving brother. And so I know when Nick Cannon comes out and starts to have these conversations and makes these type of comments with regards to this specific Cannon Class, I know it doesn't just come off the cuff. I know it's something that he's thought about. Because again, he sat in Dr. Gregory Carr's class. He graduated from Howard University with a degree in criminal justice. Now, when we think about white folk do have a history of being violent, right? And one could say that violence is synonymous with savagery and being savage. Let's think about the person whose statues we've been pulling down left and right. Christopher Columbus. He was a savage. He was violent. And so I completely understand the comments made, and I agree with the comments that were made by Nick Cannon on Cannon's class with regards to the history of white people, especially here in this country. We look at other continents, we look at Africa, and how white folk have gone in and stolen the resources, offering little in return. We see here in America in 2020, we're still talking about Black Lives Matter. That comes from a violent approach, right? That comes from a violent approach, having to say that. Why? Because those are the behaviors that have been exhibited by white folk for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we're only talking about here. Now, he's going on to, and I had to read up on it because I couldn't find the video for it with regards to the quote unquote anti-Semitic comments that he's made. And so I don't know how interesting this is, but this comes from the Jerusalem Post, right? Where I was able to find some excerpts. And so some of the comments that he's made included, let me see. So when he's talking about black folk being true Hebrews, he said, it's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people. When we are the same people who they want to be. That's our birthright. We are the true Hebrews. Now, I don't know if he's a black Hebrew Israelite. And again, I'm not too familiar with the beliefs of the black Hebrew Israelite. So prior to getting on, I was doing my reading. And I found it to be completely fascinating. Right? I found it to be completely fascinating. Where black Hebrew Israelites believe that they are the direct descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and somebody else from biblical times, right? That they're the direct descendants. And so this is the issue that we run up against, right? Because we don't have documentation, we don't have data. What we have are groups saying, listen, we are the originators. We Bobby Brown, right? We created this. This is us. And we have another group saying, no, that's not the case. Now, black Hebrew Israelites, from what I was reading, are saying that those Jewish individuals who occupy Israel now, they're just holding the fort down, right? Because the original black Hebrews, they were sent away. They were outcast. And they had to go and roam Africa, right? Until they was captured and taken to America as slaves. I don't have anything to disprove that. And so when I sit here and I read this and somebody says this is anti-Semitic, I look at it as potentially being a differing of opinions, right? Because again, nobody was around thousands and thousands of years ago. And yes, we have the Torah and we have these different books that have been in existence for a long period of time. Maybe it's one of the reasons why I'm agnostic. Because listen, I'm okay with not knowing. I don't have to lay claim to anything in particular. Because I recognize I don't know the truth. Nobody knows the truth. We over here doing our best guess jobs. And the more people that you have believing in you, the more we could purport it to be truth, to purport it to being truth. And so again, I can't sit here and say what is anti-Semitic remarks. What I can say about Deshaun Jackson's comments, right, when you're quoting Hitler, I can say that, yes, that's anti-Semitic because we know Hitler wanted to kill Jews and did kill millions of Jews. But from what I read alone, unless there's some more documentation, some more information with regards to what Nick Cannon said, I can't specifically state that that's anti-Semitic in reasoning for him to get fired. So here was his remarks. I'm not going to read it in its entirety. He says, anyone who knows me knows that I have no hate in my heart nor malice intentions. I do not condone hate speech nor the spread of hateful rhetoric. We're living in a time when it's more important than ever to promote unity and understanding. This is important. The black and Jewish communities have both faced enormous hatred, oppression, persecution, prejudice for thousands of years, and in many ways have and will continue to work together to overcome these obstacles. He says, I am an advocate for people's voices to be heard openly, fairly, and candidly. In today's conversation about anti-racism and social justice, I think we all, including myself, must continue educating one another and embrace uncomfortable conversations, yada, yada, yada. And so he openly said, listen, I'm willing to have a conversation with somebody who's more well-versed in this than me. And I think once you say that, you're open and willing to learn, to get more information to whether either disprove what it is that you're saying or to affirm what it is that you're saying. We'll be all better off for it. And so Viacom coming out asking him to apologize for his anti-Semitic remarks, I don't necessarily know if an apology is warranted. A lot of time with black folk especially, we're asked to apologize for our views on white people. I'm going to say it, on white people. We're often told that we can't have a difference of opinion in this instance, a difference of ideology, because again, it's the easiest thing you could throw out, anti-Semitic. Seinfeld had a whole episode of that, where they're making fun of dentists, saying they're anti-dentites. Right? We know here in America, you cannot say anything negative about Jewish folk. Maybe not coincidentally, you can do and promote whatever type of materials about black folk in a negative light. They could say the N-word. They could speak disparagingly about one another, and you'll continue to promote it. So how committed to social justice and unity are you, Viacom? Right? Because you should say, listen, love and hip hop, this doesn't paint the black community in the proper light, in a healthy and positive light. I can't green light this. But no, they green light it. Why? Because it brings in the cash. And so Nick Cannon was all good because he was bringing in the cash. And then they want him to capitulate. They want him to apologize. Because why? I don't know who's the head of Viacom. And I don't want to feed into stereotypes about where the money is, right? Because I don't know. Would I be surprised if the head of Viacom was potentially Jewish? No. I wouldn't be surprised. If the decision makers were Jewish? No, I wouldn't be surprised. Just like I wasn't surprised when the Eagles came out with a statement. Because why? Jeffrey Lurie is Jewish. But again, it's not even necessarily about the ethnicities involved. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I can't even say that. It is. Because it's the idea of, yes, and you'll hear people time and time again bring up Jewish people marching with black folk in the 60s. But Jewish people have also leaned into their whiteness, right? They have leaned into their whiteness to where black folk become their subordinates. We're no longer walking arm in arm. Because this is what happens in societies. There has to be somebody lower on the totem pole, unfortunately. And so if you're a Jewish people and you being treated like the Negro, why would you want to be treated like the Negro? And how they've been treated for hundreds of years since they've been in this country. So yes, you might see some arm in arm, but no, Moskowitz could change his name easily, right? Seinfeld could change his last name easily and assimilate into white culture. Black folk can't necessarily do that. Why? Because, like Jay-Z says, still nigga, right? You won't know somebody Jewish unless they tell you. Yes, they might have some features that might be related to the. But again, Judaism is a faith. Now you might have questions, you might be able to guess right, but when it comes to Negroes, a Negro is a Negro is a Negro just by looking at them. And so we didn't have that same luxury to change our last names, to assimilate into white culture, that WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, and still practice our faith. And so with Nick doubled down, right? And so he came out with a few more statements. And I'm not going to play them all. I'm not going to show them all. He says, listen, I hold myself accountable for this moment and take full responsibility because my intentions are to show that as a beautiful human species, we have way more commonalities than differences. We all family. Again, he's not saying I apologize, right? What he's saying is, listen, I do want to bring about unity, but not at the expense of truth. And then lastly, he says, truth and reconciliation. I am deeply saddened in a moment so close to reconciliation that the powers that be misuse an important moment for all of us to grow closer together and learn more about one another. Instead, the moment was stolen and hijacked to make an example out of an outspoken black man. I will not be bullied, silenced, or continuously oppressed by any organization, group, or corporation. I'm disappointed that Viacom does not understand or respect the power. And he goes on and on and on and talks about how Viacom stole Wild 'N Out for him. Because initially I had posted about, well, why not take Wild 'N Out? You have your own platform on YouTube. We have Diddy with Revolt. We have Byron Allen, who has some black channels. Maybe it's too risky for them to touch, right? Because they have conversations, they have relationships with Jewish individuals. So they might be deemed too risky. But as far as YouTube, you can go right on there, right? And promote yourself and promote your brand like you've been doing. But unfortunately, he goes on to say how he was bamboozled and swindled out of Wild 'N Out. And Viacom owns the rights to Wild 'N Out, $1 billion entity that he claims. And it became instantly frustrating because this is what happens. We tend to give our power away. We tend to sign our rights away just to get an eighth of the pie. There's a viral clip that's circulating with Viola Davis talking about, and I love me some Viola Davis. And she's talking about how she's won a Tony and Emmy and all of these different things. And she want to be paid like her white counterparts. And I'm taken back to Tyler Perry's BET speech when he says, while y'all fighting at the table, I'm down in Atlanta creating my own. And that resonated with me. Because again, here we are fighting to be a part of quote unquote their system. We want their accolades. We want their money. Like, yes, Viola Davis, you too talented. But at some point, we got to say we don't want to be a part of it anymore. And so what that means is I'm going to go to my people. And I'm going to entrust my people to potentially support me, to get me where we need to be. Viola Davis was just on the cover of Vogue. And they hired their first black photographer. In the 100 or so year existence of Vogue magazine, they hired their first black photographer. And I don't care about that. My thing is, black photographer, why do you even want to go to them? Viola Davis, why do you want to go to them? Why is it this idea of being in the mainstream associated with being on white publications? Black photographer, why must you go to them and be there first, be their token Negro? To say you did Vogue? And so I think about Nick Cannon. Now Wild 'N Out has been around forever, and it hasn't been a lot of Negro-owned stations, unfortunately. And there weren't platforms like YouTube that exist where you can truly monetize off of it. But again, this is where the frustration sets in. Because again, as much as we talk about buying black, as much as we talk about blackout on July 7th or whatever day that was and all of that, when the opportunity arises itself and the dollar amount is put in our face, we go right to it. Now I know Viola Davis has been on the cover of Essence numerous times. Is that not good enough? And again, this is something internal that we have to assess, that we have to address. Is it not good enough? Or do we complain about it yet still go over there? So I was just reading a post by one of my favorite writers, Kaise Lehman, and he was talking about his journey in finding a publicist, right? And it was an interesting journey to read, and it ultimately resulted in him selling. Listen, he had to sell thousands of books out his trunk, like it's a mixtape. And I'm like, I understand, I get it. Right? I understand, I get it. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And how I relate to that is, unless it's black folk in these positions putting us on, we need to rely on us. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good white folk out there, and if you decide to go this route, my thing is can we truly complain if we continue to buy into this idea? Can we truly complain? You know, I think about me once if and whenever I get this book done, am I going to sell it out the trunk? Or am I going to go to these people knowing that I'm possibly not going to get what I feel I'm worth? Just because of, lack of experience, skin color, ethnicity, and I don't know, right? If a Simon & Schuster comes at me, right, and they say, listen, we're going to give you $100. I don't know what my response is going to be. And yes, I can be frustrated about it. But at the end of the day, it's on me. And so when I look at Nick Cannon, I wish him well in his lawsuit against Viacom. I hope he has a leg to stand on. But again, at some point, we have to value us. And that's what it boils down to. So I'm glad he doubled down on it. There's no room for wavering once you put yourself out there and make statements like that. That's why people look at Deshaun Jackson funny. It's like, if you're going to lean into it and lean into your blackness, then lean all the way in. Because nobody will accuse you of flip-flopping or being disingenuous. Love it or hate it, that's why people embrace Louis Farrakhan, because he says, listen, this is who I am. I recognize that part of the world, that white folk will not embrace me. And so I'm entrusting my black folk to take care of me. I believe in the collective. Again, lean into it. And that's apparently what Nick is doing. Leaning into it. I mean, so outside of that, I ain't really got much. I ain't got much left. Y'all silent on the ones and twos over there. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to see if anything else popping since I've been on. I mean, shout out to Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, who of the Miami Heat, and this is reason 700 reason number 723. Why I wish he still was a Philadelphia 76er. Number one, security was called to his room because he was bouncing a basketball and working out in the wee hours of the morning. And again, this goes to the legend of Jimmy Butler, who says he goes to the basketball arena at 3 a.m. to get his work in. He recognizes that, listen, he wasn't necessarily the most talented, but he has to work hard. And so working hard means, listen, I need to wake up and put in more work and more effort than somebody else. Number two, Jimmy B. Like Maurice called him, Jimmy B. He said, listen, honestly, I want nothing on the back of my jersey. I do not want my name on the back of my jersey. Because he says, without basketball, I will be nobody. I will be just like my brothers and sisters out there. The only reason I get respected is because I play basketball, because I'm in the NBA. But outside of that, nobody cares. And that was one of the most powerful statements that I've heard yet from an NBA player, outside of, again, Kyrie Irving, who said, listen, we should start our own league. Because it's not no cheesy equality, Black Lives Matter on the back of my jersey. It's not my name on the back of my jersey. It's recognizing and bringing light to nobody would give a damn who I was if I didn't play basketball. I probably wouldn't get out of speeding tickets. if that was the case. I probably would have the police called on me regularly. I probably will be stopped and frisked. But because I play basketball and I'm in the NBA, I'm somewhat exempt from that. And so listen, I appreciate Jimmy B for that. Oh boy. And I just got a question. And I'm gonna read it on air. Because listen, you know how I do, you know how I give it up. I'm authentic with mine. And I'm not gonna say the white woman's name, but I got a question from a white woman. I've got a question. So headscarf and hair scarf seem to be trendy right now. What is your point of view on white girls wrapping their hair? Like, I sleep with a silk scarf on my head, and I'm curious about wearing headscarves out in public. But in the same respect, I am also trying to be mindful of other people's religions, cultures, and beliefs. Like, I don't want to unintentionally reappropriate something. Am I thinking about it too much? Let's see, what's the rest of this say? Like my brother-in-law, who is Indian and I'm Muslim, has no issue with me showing up to an event with a headscarf on. I'm mainly doing so for fashion reasons. What am I to say to that? I don't wear a hair scarf, right? I don't look at headscarves as being related. I recognize that it's related to culture for sure, whether we're talking about religion, and mainly religion is the reason why people wear hair scarves, right? Unless we're talking about our black queens, black sisters out here who wear hair scarves to protect their hairdos. I'm not the one to ask about this. I know my ledge. I could sit and say I don't care, right? I'm not necessarily the one to answer this. For real. Maybe it might be Ask a Black Person. That might be a new segment that I might roll out for my white folk who do tune in. But no, and maybe you guys might have some thoughts about a white woman who wears a scarf. Again, I don't know, right? I don't think it's in the style of a Kimar, right? Well, I'm trying to think like how it's going to look. I don't know. This again, this is not my lane. This is like not my lane, and maybe I could direct to somebody. I'm glad she's being thoughtful about it. I'm glad she's being thoughtful about it. My thing is, hey, go do what you do, right? Go do what you do. I'm not one to say white girls can't wear braids. Just don't act like you invented the shit. I think that's where I'm at with mine. Don't act like this is something you invented. But then again, we go to that whole history piece where I have no idea about the origins of braids, right? But I know now, culturally speaking, that that's not something that y'all wear. So my thing is, again, if you're wearing it for head, if somebody asks you, you tell them that. You're not doing it to culturally appropriate. You're doing it because it's simpler for you. Maurice says he's noticed that white women have wrapped their hair, especially when they are suffering hair loss. That could very well be the case. I'm not going to sit here and say I know many white women. I am not in the NBA. It's like, no, but I mean, I guess it's an interesting question when we talk about just, cultural appropriation. Are you going full Christina Aguilera because you wear a headscarf? I would say no. Are you adopting an entire culture like she did? Just so she can get dirty and be in New York City doing the heel toe right after she was a genie in a bottle? If that's not the case, if you just rocking it because you want to rock it, I'm all right with it. But again, I don't speak for black folk, especially hair scarves, because not too many black men that I'm aware of wear headscarves. Do we wear scarves? I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I can't think of any instances where we wear scarves. So that, again, that's not my lane. It's not my avenue, and I'm gonna let her know as such. So listen, man, we out this piece. It is 7:43, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Until tomorrow night. Oh wait, before I get out of here. Oh wait. Right before I got out, Dane wanted to write something. If I can share, my family has Bohemian heritage, and yet that it is used in EDC fashion. If anything, just being aware of the culture, knowing what it is that you're wearing is paramount. If it is special culture behind it, you should be aware of it and wear accordingly. This is my opinion. Yeah, again, if you're wearing it as such, all right, don't be out here like I saw something in a magazine. It's probably a couple years ago where it was like Timberlands are all the new fashion. Like Timberland is all the new fashion. It had this white woman with Timbs on. Oh man, black folk was up in arms because we've been holding down Timberland, right or wrong, for the last 20 years, and it's always been a fashion trend, right? Now, if she came out here with some finger waves, if she came out here with something else that was directly related to a culture, and as Dane said, the reason how you're wearing it, right? Are you wearing it turban-esque? Are you wearing it Kemar-esque? Then yeah, you need to be mindful of it. But again, a lot of this goes into the styling of it too. If you wearing it like Tupac did his, I'm just gonna think you just a white person who liked Tupac. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's up to her how she wants to wear it. I encourage her to be mindful, but not to overthink, because again, we are in a time where you do something once and it could be the end of you. You know what I mean? It could be the end of you. You could get fired from Viacom. Now, I'm not one with this conversation about, and I saw how they fired Nick Cannon so quickly, but the killers of Breonna Taylor are still on the loose. Yeah, I just, again, I'm not a fan of these comparisons, man. I'm not a fan of these comparisons because, again, it's completely different situations, right? And we recognize as that the legal system is effed up. And unfortunately, things related to cop killings, cop murders, they can take a long ass time because it's built in to their contracts what needs to take place, how long the investigation has to be, if they even get to the point of that. right? And so, listen, don't compare Nick Cannon's situation, something frivolous and meaningless as being fired, to what's taking place with Breonna Taylor. Because the systems, even though they all come from that umbrella of white supremacy and all of that, it starts to go different ways, right? It starts to go different ways. So, yeah, man. And let me play my last video. We got some new Umar for y'all. Hashtag Quantify LLC.
Donations. Gifts.
Hashtag
Gifts.
Quantify LLC.
More gifts.
More donation.
More gifts.
More gifts. I appreciate y'all. I'm out.